episode of Fishbowltales. What I have in front of me is about 90% of the powertrain wiring that's going in the bus. It might look a little bit daunting, and it is. Let me get some of this stuff unboxed and we'll go over the components in detail. So right out of the gate, I'm starting with the transmission wiring harness, and this whole system is pretty comprehensive. It's probably one of the more complicated systems in the whole bus. So let's start with the components I have laid out here in the front. So this is the shift pad. This goes up inside of the driver's compartment of the bus. It has very few wires, but it communicates basically with the driver's compartment all the way back to this guy, which is the transmission control module. And that controls the operation of the transmission. This guy here is just a fuse and relay panel, so all of the input power goes into that. It's fused, and then all of the relays turn on and off certain parts of the system. The information that's laid out in the front is all proprietary Allison information that I purchased in order to understand this completely, because without it I would have had no idea what I was doing. So this piece of harness here goes up to the shift pad in the front of the bus. Like I said, very few wires. You've got CAN bus wiring, and then you've got another 5 wires that go all the way up to the front of the bus. So the harness is going to be relatively slim outside of the engine bay. There's really not a whole lot going on. We'll run everything up to basically the power distribution box and to the shift pad, and that's about it. So moving on from there, this piece of harness branches out and it will go to both of those systems. This guy here is a TPS sensor that actually controls the downshifting of the transmission via basically the throttle cable off of the engine. And this system here is the main wiring harness for this transmission. This is everything that branches out of the transmission control module from this big plug here and goes to all of the subsystems on the transmission. I have spent countless hours meticulously labeling this whole system, which pin they go to, which pin they came from, out of the TCM plug to all of the subsystems, and then out here on the end as well. So I can figure this out and understand it completely. And it's been a lot of fun, but it's been a lot of sleepless nights and trying to wrap my head around a system that I'm really not that familiar with. But I think I've got a pretty good grasp on it now, and we'll make it work. So a quick side note on the transmission wiring. When I purchased all of this stuff, I purchased it from a dismantler down in California, and I received almost everything with the transmission, aside from the power distribution box, the TPS sensor, and any idea of where anything went. So the harness had been cut basically as soon as it started on the chassis of the RV that it came out of. So I had all of the parts and pieces, but not a really good understanding of where everything went. Here we have the wiring harness off of our Cummins engine, and I have not taken the time yet to go through this and decipher what each of the wires do or the pin out of the engine harness. So that's definitely on my list of things to get done. It is pretty disgusting. It smells like diesel, it's covered in oil, but yeah, when I have some time I will go through this one. This is a pretty simple harness in comparison to the transmission one. Since there was no ECU included in the sale of the engine when I purchased it, I had to go out and find one. So this is the ECU for the 24 valve Cummins. It's very slim. One plug comes out of it and it actually bolts to the side of the engine block. So definitely gonna have to figure out if this thing actually works, because I bought it on eBay. So all bets are off on that one. I really hope it does. If you've never done wiring before, there's the easy way to do wiring and there's the expensive, really nice way to do wiring. This is somewhere in the middle of all of that. So basically I have a portion of my life savings wrapped up in the tools and the components to get this stuff done. I wanted to build a really nice harness for this bus because I only want to do it one more time. I've actually already built a harness for this bus one time in the past, before it was on the road the last time. So I want this one to be the last one I have to do. So we'll start in the front here. This is like a regular set of WeatherPack terminal crimpers and the tool to release the pins inside of the plug. There aren't going to be a whole lot of weather pack connectors in this thing. I've gone with mostly Deutsch connectors on this one because I like the style and they're really readily available and the parts are pretty inexpensive to put a connector together. This guy here is probably one of the coolest tools I own. This is for crimping the pins that go into a Deutsch connector onto a wire, and this one will do size 16 wire, or size 16 terminals. This bundle here is CAN bus wiring. Nothing incredibly specific, but I wanted to find the exact same wiring that came out of the transmission harness so that I could repin it and do one continuous run from end to end with no terminals or anything in the, in between it interrupting the connection from front to back. I don't think it really matters. However, I wanted to do it right one time and not have to do it again. This is the entire Deutsch connector kit that I put together. So every bit of information that runs from the back of the bus up to the front of the bus in the driver's compartment is going to run through one of these guys. And we have a male and a female Deutsch connector, and they use the opposite pins in the opposite connector. And these guys are really cool because you can mount one on the firewall and one will contain basically the entire harness of everything that's in the engine bay, and they just spin right together. So you connect them up like that, and then it's got a collar that spins the two together and locks everything nice and tight, which is super, super cool. I've never messed with any of this stuff before, but I really like the design and the simplicity of it, and I mean, all of it's weather tight. It's a really, really nice system. All of this stuff, these are just strain reliefs that go on the back side of these connectors, and the rest of this stuff are pins and strain reliefs and rubber seals and all of that stuff to complete the harness from the transmission over to the power distribution module. Now we're getting into the fun stuff here. I've got a full selection of analog odometer gauges that are going to be going in the dash of the bus. We've got water temperature, air pressure, transmission temperature, and voltage, as well as RPM, and this isn't an odometer part, but it's just a little Chinese GPS speedometer that's going to be going in the dash because I didn't want to have to try to adapt a speedometer cable to anything. But this is just a small selection of what's going to be in the dash of the bus so that I can keep tabs on all of the vitals. So to round out things in the engine bay, we've got a couple of parts here. This is the wiring harness for the fast fuel system. It's pretty simple, everything's already plugged, so basically just a power and ground and a relay, and we're done there. This guy is going to be the fan controller for the two fans that are mounted to the intercooler. This is a Proform Parts variable speed digital fan controller, and this is their updated model as of like a year ago. But this thing is super cool. I can't wait to test it out, because what this will allow us to do is control both of those fans, but not kick them on full throttle right out of the gate like you normally would with a switch or a traditional temperature sensor. This will actually ramp the fans in. So if we're idling in traffic and the temperatures are pretty much under control, it'll kick the fans on and off, and it'll ramp them up from slow speed to high speed depending on the temperature. So I really can't wait to use this. I think it's going to be pretty sweet. Last but certainly not least is the crowning jewel of this entire system. This is the Quadzilla Adrenaline, which is one giant leap up from a normal diesel tuner. What this does is it basically allows you full control of the tuning of the fuel pump that's in that bus, which means you can make more horsepower. If you know me personally, you know that I can't leave well enough alone, and I think this is going to take this bus from being anemic and reasonably reliable to something that'll actually get down the highway without pissing people off. The really awesome part about this system is that it has a Wi-Fi dongle that allows you to tune it using an iPad, and it will actually allow you to display all of the vitals of the bus. Basically anything that you have a sensor installed that the system is going to read will be displayed on a digital dash on an iPad. So that's the reason I went with kind of a small selection of gauges versus absolutely everything I needed to see is because this guy right here takes care of everything else. I am over the moon excited to try this thing out and to see what it'll do. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching this week's episode. I appreciate you guys so much. I hope you're as excited as I am for what I've got in store for you in the future here. Hopefully we can get this thing running this year, get it out on the road, and enjoy it. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and make sure you hit that thumbs up. I'll see you guys in the next one.